Hi everybody, welcome to Are You a Glow Kid? Psychosocial Emotional Educational Program for Optimal Learning. My name is Elisa DiChristina, MSW, and today I want to talk a little bit more about what makes us unique and why this program is innovative and groundbreaking. We talked a little bit about that in other videos, but I want to go into certain bullets that I feel are really important. There are a lot of advocacy and awareness groups for different causes, anti-stigma, anti-bully. There's a lot of advocacy and awareness and great work being done. We are in the lane of education. Of course, with education, there's advocacy for change and there's awareness that we're trying to draw, but we're more than that. I'm using my 20 plus years of field experience to put into the program to really educate children and make that cohesion between academics and home. We're also not so concerned with legislation. We're focusing on the person and the environment perspective, which is very social work, right? We're interested in equality and justice and integrity and as some of the core social work values that are dear to me, we want to help the underprivileged. And I feel like children is the underprivileged identified population because I feel that in the educational system, the mark is being missed to truly provide the guidance these children so desperately need. So that's very different than working on, a legislative piece of the puzzle. I want to work directly with the child to empower the child, him or herself, by giving them the tools directly they need for a successful adult life that starts in the pre-primary years. And this is not a personal viewpoint. So this is a professional viewpoint. That's very different than some of the other campaigns. We're not coming at it from a personal perspective. We're coming at this from an educational perspective and a professional viewpoint. We are not a reactionary program. We're not incidental, right? So we're not taking an incident and responding to it and reacting to it. We're a proactive, preventative-based, strength-based program. So we're not reacting to anything. We're looking at where we are as a society and where the identified population is, where we are in history with our technology, our family structures, and we're looking at concepts of prevention and a historical perspective. So we are not reactionary, we are proactive. Very different, proactive and preventative. We are not emotional or fear-based. So again, we're not taking something that's personal or very emotional and reacting to it and over-emotionally reacting to it. Sometimes that can happen in campaigns. We're taking a very empowered perspective and an asset-based approach perspective. We are for-profit. That's very different than being non-for-profit. What we're saying is our program has a lot of value in the 63 pages of the educational guide. A lot of 3+ years have been put into the program, and we are not a non-for-profit organization asking for a donation. So that's another differentiator. We feel that the program has value and we've assigned a value to it. We're not blaming or disjointing in our viewpoint. So our viewpoint is a theoretical. It pulls from strength-based theory. It pulls from different social work modalities and psychological modalities. It takes a theory approach to the program, so it's grounded in something, and it has a collaborative viewpoint. We want to work cumulatively with the parents, the educators, the directors of camps, the scout leaders. This is collaborative. I think the problem's gone beyond just blaming someone and throwing things over the fence. The issues our children face need to be corrected collaboratively and multi-system between mental health, education, family systems. We need to really start working together to emote the change that the children really need for their wellness. So again, it works in social work systems theory, and we work on a micro level with the child in and of her individual self to teach them certain and specific skills that they need for their well navigation. And we work into the interactions of the children, and then we work all the way to the macro approach. We're saying this needs to be brought into the educational system. So it's unique in that way because we're taking a lot of different system approaches and intertwining them. And we're teaching interpersonal navigation. We're working within education, social work, mental health, legal, and we're trying to lower the incidences of behavior becoming legal, right? So what's the difference between when it's a behavior, let's use bullying, versus a criminal offensive charge, right? Or a terroristic threat where you may have now police coming in. And so that's the legal system, right? So now we're occupying our legal system to come in and help us resolve maybe a criminal matter that was based on behavior. So we're trying to avoid that. And this program encompasses problem-solving approaches and methods and solution-focused approaches. So again, it's not about the blaming and disjointing. We're problem-solving. This is our attempt of many to problem-solve the critical issues that children are experiencing that are depleting them from their ability to manage their developmental tasks. We're trying to focus on a solution. We are not symptom focused. We're root cause focused. So again, using bullying, let's use that as an example. The bullying is the symptom of the lack of skill, right? Or the lack of the root cause or the foundation. We talked about the seed and the root. Because of that lacking, you then have the acting out behavior of the bullying. We're not trying to fix the behavior of the bullying. We're trying to go way back to prevention and correct what was lacking and go into the root cause to correct that in the foundational years developmentally. We're not a lecture program. So a lot of times children will go to an assembly in their school and they sit in kind of a parallel format and they're next to each other and they're observing an assembly and they're not really doing peer engagement. We are an engagement program. So the classmates are they're directly interacting with each other. In and of the program in and of itself is built in peer relations and peer bonding. It's in the experiential exercise, and there's 27 lesson plans. So we have at least 30 exercises that are engaging. So it's not an observation that I'm sitting in an assembly and I'm listening to an expert in that manner. I'm engaged in practicing my own skill. Very different. A lot of programs that are out there, we in our observation are disjointed and we're very cohesive. So we're teaching off of one cohesive story, different skills. So the child is not going to an assembly that's character based learning and then going to an assembly where we appreciate differences. And so the child is getting a different presenter in that assembly than the next assembly and can't always make the connection between that learning or the skill because it's presented in different assemblies, right? So the hierarchy of the expert telling me to learn about this subject matter is inherent in that assembly format, right? So then another expert is telling me about the character, or let's say cultural awareness. So sometimes I'll ask children what they learned from their assembly, and they are not able to identify really what they learned. They know they had an assembly, they can tell me what happened, but they're not really honing in on the skill, and they didn't practice the skill. They might just really be interested in the different children wearing different colored socks, and Susie had that sock on and this sock, and it was mismatched sock day, and they're understanding that the sock, right, but not maybe necessarily what that was supposed to teach them, or furthermore how to apply that to their own life. So how do I take the sock that's mismatched, that may be a good idea to teach a child cultural competency, right? So, and appreciating differences. But then how do I do that on the playground? We're talking about a sock. So they can't always abstract that, and when there's a conflict, become inclusive, because they might not be able to do that. It's not concrete enough. So hierarchy versus collaborative and engaging. We're different because some campaigns have a very broad age range, and they're anti-bully. We have a very specific age range. We're going into a specific developmental task, time period, and teaching at a specific point in their stage of development. So we're a very specific educational program. Again, going back to, let's use the assemblies as a format. They're a one-time design. So a child goes in, here's the message, it's a one-time assembly design. There's very different, there may be reinforcing, but not in that format. This is very different because it's a comprehensive, cohesive design that not only reinforces the same skills throughout the program, but reinforces the storyline. It's reinforcing the actual essence of the story. So every time they pick it up, they visit Chloe again. They know who she is. They know who she represents. They know who the upstanders are. They know who the bystanders. It's a concrete, cohesive storyline that's reinforced over time, very different than a one-time assembly, where children learn by reinforcement. And inherent in that format is very limited ways to reinforce the content being presented. So, again, we want to thank you for watching. We're trying to really correct a lot of the issues that the children are having such a negative impact from, and hope to make such a huge change. And parents play such a strategic role, because you can really advocate for the program to be taught to your child, and then reinforce it in the home, and really start to collaborate with your educators on the same page, and we could become less reactionary, right? So the phone calls coming home, unfortunately, are 90% of the time or 95% of the time either in the nurse's office, or the child is not done something so good. So that's what we want to strategically strengthen. Again, the parents have a lot of ability to change the way their children are educated. This is so important, so that the children grow up with a solid foundation of their human developmental assets, right? So, and then it could be a conversation that is much different than's taking place today. And the educator and the parent aren't necessarily talking about an incident with the child when the phone call comes home. They're now, through the program, would have skills to talk about. And the behavior, in a way, that goes back to the skill that was lacking. Use the program to increase the child's ability to have the skill, right? So we're facilitating positive communication, a positive culture climate between the parent and the educator in that circumstance. So our program is very different than a lot of the programs out there, and I think that's what makes it very special and unique and innovative, and that's what's going to eventually be so helpful in changing all of the unfortunately negative outcomes out there today. Thank you for watching, and I'm Elisa.